A shocking headline ignites the global markets. President Trump threatens a 39% tariff on Swiss goods, targeting the heart of its economy, gold. The move sends a shockwave of chaos through financial centers, sparking a firestorm of global protectionism. Suddenly, America's closest ally, Canada, is caught in a trade war it didn't start. With its own economy under siege from US tariffs on autos and steel, Ottawa is forced to fight back, charting a new and defiant course. How does a nation defend itself when the rulebook has been thrown into the fire? For generations, the relationship between the United States and Canada was the bedrock of global economic stability. It was the world's largest and most successful trading partnership, a multi-trillion-dollar behemoth built on a foundation of shared values and deep mutual trust. From the auto plants of the Great Lakes to the energy pipelines stretching across the continent, their economies were woven together into a single, seamless fabric. For businesses and workers on both sides, this integration meant one thing above all: predictability. But this golden era of cooperation began to corrode under the acid of America First nationalism. The Trump administration viewed this deep integration not as a source of strength, but as a story of American victimization. The narrative shifted from partnership to predation, with allies like Canada framed as competitors who had exploited the system for too long. The unspoken rules of engagement were torn up, replaced by a new transactional doctrine, where the threat of tariffs became the primary tool of diplomacy. The foundation of trust began to crumble, setting the stage for an unprecedented wave of economic aggression that would not only target adversaries, but America's closest and most steadfast friends. The era of predictability was over. The era of chaos was about to begin. The move that threw the global economy into a tailspin wasn't aimed at Canada, but at a small, neutral nation across the Atlantic. In a stunning display of economic force, President Donald Trump announced a potential 39% tariff on all Swiss goods. While the White House later suggested gold might be excluded, the damage was done. The mere threat was enough to ignite a firestorm. Gold is the ultimate safe haven, the bedrock of the global financial system. Targeting it, even rhetorically, was seen as a reckless act of destabilization. The move sparked chaos, with allies and adversaries alike questioning America's reliability as a steward of the global economy. But this was just a symptom of a much larger strategy. For President Trump, this was the ultimate expression of his America First doctrine. The goal was to create maximum disruption, to shatter old alliances and trade norms, and to force the world to renegotiate its relationship with the United States on his terms. And while the world was reeling from the Swiss threat, the Trump administration was already deep into its campaign against its northern neighbor. In February 2025, the White House unleashed a barrage of tariffs, hitting nearly all Canadian goods with a 25% levy. Energy was slapped with 10%. By mid-March, the assault intensified with a direct hit on the heart of the integrated North American economy, a 25% tariff on Canadian cars and auto parts. The stated justifications were a moving target, but the intent was clear: to use overwhelming economic force to coerce a key ally. This was a president who viewed trade not as a mutually beneficial exchange, but as a zero-sum game of winners and losers. The tariffs were his weapon of choice, a tool to punish, to pressure, and to prove that the United States would no longer be bound by the rules of an international system it had helped to create. Caught in the crossfire of this global trade war, Canada refused to be a victim. Instead of buckling under the pressure, Ottawa crafted a sophisticated, multi-pronged counterattack designed to defend its interests and chart a new path forward. The first response was direct and forceful. For every tariff Trump imposed, Canada answered in kind. When the US hit Canadian goods with a 25% tariff, Canada immediately fired back with its own 25% duties on tens of billions of dollars of American products. When Trump targeted the auto sector, Canada mirrored the move, hitting American cars and parts with a 25% levy. This was a clear signal to Washington: we will not be bullied, and we will not hesitate to inflict reciprocal economic pain. Alongside these retaliatory measures, the government rushed to protect its own industries, offering a 6-month deferral on import duties for manufacturers and rolling out a major financial aid package for large employers to prevent mass layoffs. But the most significant part of Canada's strategy was not about fighting back. It was about breaking away. The chaos of the Trump era had exposed Canada's greatest economic vulnerability, its overwhelming dependence on the US market. The government launched an aggressive and urgent campaign of trade diversification. The results were stunning. In just 1 year, from May 2024 to May 2025, the share of Canadian exports going to the United States dropped a full 10 percentage points, from 78% to 68%. Canadian businesses, with government support, were forging new partnerships in the UK, the European Union, Australia, and across Asia. The most dramatic evidence of this pivot was in the very commodity that started the global panic: gold. As the US market became more unpredictable, Canadian gold producers shifted their exports. In that same 1-year period, the value of Canadian gold sold to the United Kingdom skyrocketed by an incredible 473%. It was a clear and powerful statement. If America didn't want to play by the rules, Canada would find other partners who did. This leaves both nations locked in a precarious new reality. The United States continues to wield its tariffs as a weapon, convinced that economic pressure will eventually force its allies to bend. But in Canada, a fundamental strategic shift has occurred. The country is actively rewiring its economic DNA, a process that is difficult and costly, but one its leaders now see as essential for survival. Experts caution that this pivot is no magic bullet. The deeply integrated North American supply chains cannot be untangled overnight. Yet the trend is undeniable. The trade war intended to pull Canada closer and force it into a more subservient relationship has instead pushed it further away, accelerating its journey toward a more independent and globally oriented economic future. While Canada's strategic pivot to new markets is a long-term plan for survival, it can't erase the short-term pain inflicted by the US tariffs. Nowhere is this pain. The uncertainty sent a chill through the entire community. It threatened thousands of good-paying jobs that are the bedrock of the local economy. The government's emergency aid packages and tax deferrals provided a crucial buffer, helping these businesses stay afloat and avoid immediate mass layoffs. But these were temporary fixes to a deep structural wound. The tariffs created a cloud of instability that made it impossible for businesses to plan for the future, to invest in new equipment, or to hire new workers. For the people on the front lines of this trade war, the cost was measured not just in dollars, but in sleepless nights and a profound sense of betrayal by their closest neighbor. But this economic pain was not a one-way street. When Canada retaliated with its own 25% tariffs, it did so with surgical precision, targeting iconic American products to maximize political pressure inside the United States. Consider the impact on a manufacturer of heavy equipment in the American Midwest. For years, Canada has been one of their largest and most reliable export markets. American-made tractors, combines, and construction vehicles are a common sight across Canadian farms and job sites. Suddenly, Canada's retaliatory tariff made those machines 25% more expensive for Canadian buyers. A Canadian farmer who was about to invest in a new American-made combine was now forced to reconsider, either delaying the purchase or looking to competitors from Europe or Asia. For the American company, this meant a sudden and significant drop in sales. Orders were canceled or postponed indefinitely. This didn't just hurt the company's bottom line, it had a direct impact on the American workers on the factory floor. Slower sales meant fewer shifts, reduced overtime, and eventually, the threat of layoffs. The very tariffs that were supposed to protect American jobs were now directly responsible for putting them at risk. It was a stark and painful lesson in the realities of an integrated economy. When you punch your biggest customer in the face, you should not be surprised when they stop buying your products. The blowback was felt not in Washington, D.C., but in the small towns and factories across the American heartland. A trade war, sparked by a reckless threat against a neutral nation, has pushed America's most important alliance to the brink. Faced with an unpredictable and hostile partner, Canada has been forced to retaliate, to defend its interests, and to accelerate its pivot away from the United States. The old certainties are gone, and the foundation of trust that once defined the North American economy has been shattered, leaving both nations to navigate a more dangerous and uncertain world. In the race to define the future, will North America win together, or will both nations lose by trying to go it alone? Are you American or Canadian? Share your story and your perspective in the comments below.